the first time I come out, a guy brought me out in the middle of the night. Well, it was probably 3 o'clock in the morning. And we went down in the fort and the big rocks next to the sewer. And he says, "Oh, we go out on these rocks." I said, "What are you, crazy?" It's dark. I've never been there before.
Started fishing Montauk in 1982. And I had a 1975 Ford Granada with a big rust hole in the corner panel. I just remember driving down Sunrise Highway all psyched because I read about it in The Fisherman. And I'm friggin' driving down Sunrise, I'm going to Montauk, I'm going to Montauk. And that's when it started, 1982. Didn't catch a fish my first year.
First time I came to Montauk was approximately 1944. Came on the midnight train from, it used to leave from Penn Station, I believe. We got it at Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. It was a long ride. And in those days, the train went to where the party boats were. And I vividly recall the guys jumping off the train, running to get their spots on the party boats, and there was rods already tied up on the, on the bow of the boat. So, and I said, "My friend, why don't we go on the boats? Looks like they're going to catch fish." He says, "No, we're going someplace else." And then we walked through the streets. He knocked on the back door of Johnny's. I believe it was the first year it was open. It was still not open. It was about like 6 in the morning. And then we went to the South Shore beaches, which were the place to be in those days. In the spring run was the big run. And he fished eels until the train took us back. We walked back to the train station, and I all saw boxes of fish when I passed the boats. I said, "See, look at all the fish." They had porgies.
I came out here the first time in 1964, shortly after being discharged from the Army. And I made one attempt and lost my plugs and went home.
My stepfather had come from East Hampton. We had gone out to Montauk, out to the light one time, and I loved the looks of the place. And I figured that's one spot where I'm going to surf fish. And I went, I think the first year I went out there was 1953. And that was it for me, because I went to Montauk just every year after that. I became a regular in the 60s, probably around 61, 62, and just loved the place.
In my late teens, I started fishing for bass around Fire Island Inlet. And I always dreamed about Montauk and heard the stories about Montauk. And I had this old 1965 Rambler American that the seats went down. I said, "You know what, I'm going to go spend a weekend in Montauk." And my wife came with me. And it was in the fall of '65. And I came out to Montauk, and I went down to the water one night with the only plug I had, a Adam Popper, and I caught like a 6-pound bass, and I was the happiest man in the world.
My first setup, when I first went out there and walked in front of the lighthouse, I had a 5-foot freshwater rod with a little 300 Mitchell reel, and I looked, and everyone looking at me like I was some sort of a freak. And I knew this was not the thing to do, and I got out of there real quick.
The guys that I fished with came out here and fished Montauk. So they kept talking about Montauk, and I was doing well down in Democrat, but not as well as I wanted. And in fact, I wanted big fish. So I came to Montauk.
I never did that good in the Rockaways, or then I was fishing Fire Island demo, and I kept hearing about Montauk and all the great fishing, and they would tell me, oh, there was a lot of fish last week at Montauk, they're gonna pass by here. They never pass by. They never pass. And one day I met Percy, and we had fish, and then the fish moved off, a boat scared them, and he says, I'm going to Montauk. I says, I gotta go there. And then I read about Rance's 58, and I came out.
The first time I fished Montauk, I fished in a wetsuit. I never brought waders to Montauk until many years later. Like I said, we picked up the wetsuits on the way out to Montauk and put some corkers on our feet. We knew that much. And parked in the parking lot, walked in and fished one end of the north side to the other. We didn't know anything about it. We didn't know any spots. We just decided to fish. What's funny is I still fish some of the rocks that I found that first trip to Montauk.
I just kept on fishing Turtle Cove, Turtle Cove, Turtle Cove, right in the edge by the pillbox there. And I always thought it was outgoing water, but it was actually the next year somebody told me it was incoming. So I started fishing incoming, I started catching fish. First time ever I was in Montauk. I'm in, well, my first year. You know, I was from like the North Shore in Bayville, so I'm in my waders. I have no corkers on. Nothing. I mean, just a 7-foot rod, and I see these guys with these big rods and taped up corkers, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys don't know what the fuck they're doing. You know, look at them with what they got, taped spikes. I'm under the lighthouse, no corkers, nothing, just my 7-foot rod. You know, no wonder I didn't catch anything.
All the heavy hitters went to Montauk. That's where the big reports were coming from. You heard rumors, you had some first-hand reports from guys you met. But really, that seemed to be the place where everything was happening. So my buddy and I bought some wetsuits on the way out to Montauk. Stopped at Divers Way in Bayshore, suited up on wetsuits, and continued driving and went to Montauk. We had some sodas and a couple of sandwiches in the back, and we were going to fish all night.
We didn't have the crowds in those days. The light, maybe 5 or 6 guys. Nobody fished on the wall in those days either. They fished down on the rocks in the water if the water wasn't too rough. And you have maybe 5 or 6 or 7 good rocks that you could stand on. And that was waders. That was before a wetsuit came along. But you really fished up on the wall where the fill-in rocks were. So that, of course, has changed. This water level's gotten higher. I guess the rocks have sunk down due to the loss of the sand in front. But again, we didn't have big crowds. North Bar could be crowded on Friday and Saturday nights. The Reef occasionally would get a bit crowded, but otherwise you had plenty of room and very few aggravations.
I would come in a Volkswagen Bug, and I made 2-day trips, and I either kept missing the fish and then reading about it later, how the fish came in. I says, I gotta go for the weekend. And that's when I went. I went a weekend with the Bug, slept in the back of the Bug. Not a good experience. Not good. I ended up sleeping. I got out. I fished. I caught fish. At first I thought they were rocks. I was hitting rocks, but they were fish because I didn't want to lose my daughter. Set the hook. But I did good. I got fish up to 20, about 6, 8 fish. And I went back and I had the fish chained to the outside of the Volkswagen Bug. And I kept hearing people in the middle of the night, look at those fish, look at those fish.
The first thing we saw was Johnny's tackle shop. We were told to go there. Go to Johnny's and tell them who you are, you know. And we did that, and we came out to the point, and we noticed a lot of people 20 cars were backed in underneath the pine trees that were over by the old outhouse. And we got to talking to the people that were under there, and they were all fishing. And you didn't need a permit, you didn't need anything but a fishing rod.
But we brought some stuff with us, ice, water. We purchased eggs and ham. We would cook right out of the back of our cars or our trucks. I would say we probably brought a good amount with us.
To the north side of the modern bathroom was nothing but pine trees, big pine trees, 25, 30 feet pine trees, with pine needles all over the ground. And we used to take out a aluminum table and chairs and sit around the table and chairs, and we rigged up our buggies to eat in them, or we cooked under the pines. And it was a real nice place. On a hot day, it was 10 degrees cooler under the pine trees.
Well, a typical day at Montauk in those days, I would fish the north side on the dropping tide, outgoing water. On incoming, fish the light. We could not go into the fort in the 50s until I think about 59. It was off limits. And you'd sneak into Brown's once in a while. If the guard wasn't on duty at Turtle Cove. And one time I got caught in there, and there were 2 MPs up on the hill, up on the cliff, and they were yelling like heck. The first time I heard the yell, I looked up and down the beach, didn't see anybody. And this was in daytime. And the next time I heard the yell, after I'd made another cast, I looked up and the 2 MPs were there, waving their arms, shouting. One guy even had a pistol in his hand, although he held it down. I got back on the beach and they told me I better leave or they're going to take me into custody. So you couldn't fish in the fort. You couldn't fish in Brown's unless you were lucky. And another time I went into King's at night, stumbling all the way in. And I was out on a rock at King's, didn't dare shine a light. And I started seeing what I thought was shooting stars, and then I realized they were tracer bullets. I don't think the soldiers doing the shooting saw me, but I got off my rock real fast, fell over a couple of times. And interesting thing is, in those days, they dumped all the shells and the big guns at King's. There were hundreds of them laying there, so you'd trip on those things. And I went back to get out of there real fast. And that was the last time I was in there until 1960, when then you could apply for a permit, free permit, and you went through one gate. You would get a check in your car. Of course, you couldn't have more than 2 people in a car. And you went down and you fished, parked at King's, nowhere else. And that's the way it was for a couple of years in the early 60s. And then, of course, the fort opened up and everybody could get in there and you could fish Browns.